Hi everybody, and I'm back after my week off, and now for the rest of Lent, having missed the first Sunday in Lent with my holiday, this is what I'm going to do for 5 Sundays. Lent, in one sense, is about a journey to Jerusalem. We're following Jesus on his journey. But in the Old Testament, you had the pilgrims on a journey to Jerusalem, and that's reflected in some of the Psalms. There's a section of the Psalms that we call the Psalms of Ascent, from Psalm 120 to 134. And they are each called a Song of Ascent, thought to be to do with the pilgrims on their way to Jerusalem. I'm going to take 5 of the most popular of those psalms and preach through them in Lent. And the first one we're going to do is the very famous Psalm 121. I lift up my eyes to the mountains. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. He will not let your foot slip. He who watches over you will not slumber. Indeed, he who watches over Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord watches over you. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. The sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from all harm. He will watch over your life. The Lord will watch over your coming and going, both now and forevermore. Have you ever lost something and not found it for a while because you were looking in the wrong place for it? That sometimes happens in our household. One of us misplaces our mobile phone, cannot find it, and says to someone else in the family, "Can you ring my phone, please?" It will then turn out that we've been looking downstairs for a phone that was upstairs in the bedroom. Or one of us goes to our pocket for our car key, only for it not to be there. It's fallen out of that pocket and slipped down between the seats of the sofa. It was no good looking in the pocket. That was the wrong place. I'll leave those of you who know us personally to guess who it is who loses their phone and who it is who loses their car key. Either way, we get frustrated by looking in the wrong place, all without knowing. Psalm 121 is for people who are looking in the wrong place for God, for matters of the Spirit, for the meaning of life. And since this psalm is describing the journey of pilgrims to Jerusalem for Israel's great feasts, the implication is that even disciples can look in the wrong places for the important things in life. It's all there in those opening 2 verses. I lift up my eyes to the mountains. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. Many people read those famous words, I lift my eyes to the mountains, and think that the psalmist is encouraging us to look at the wonder of creation. But while the majestic peaks the pilgrims would have seen on their journey would have been awe-inspiring, that is not what the psalmist is affirming here. No, it's looking to the mountains versus our help coming from the Lord. Why? Well, Eugene Peterson, who I'm going to quote a lot today and will probably come up as later in the series, Eugene Peterson says this: during the time this psalm was written and sung, Palestine was overrun with popular pagan worship. Much of this religion was practiced on hilltops. Shrines were set up, groves of trees were planted, sacred prostitutes, both male and female, were provided. Persons were lured to shrines to engage in acts of worship that would enhance the fertility of the land, would make you feel good, would protect you from evil. There were nostrums, protections, spells, and enchantments against all the perils of the road. Do you fear the sun's heat? Go to the sun priest and pay for protection against the sun god. Are you fearful of the malign influence of moonlight? Go to the moon priestess and buy an amulet. Are you haunted by the demons that can use a pebble under your foot to trip you? Go to the shrine and learn the magic formula to ward off the mischief. From whence shall my help come? From Baal? From Asherah? From the sun priest? From the moon priestess? You see now that for the pilgrims to lift up their eyes to the mountains was to go looking in the wrong place. The mountains were the strongholds of false gods, idols, demons, and occult practices. So 2 things the psalmist says, and the first is, don't look to false gods. Verses 3 and 4. He will not let your foot slip. He who watches over you will not slumber. Indeed, he who watches over Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. In the days of the psalmist, there was a popular belief that a demon could move a pebble and make you slip. Therefore, you needed to seek protection. There was a variety of idols to which you could turn. One of the most popular, Baal, is hinted at in these words of the psalm, when we read that the true God will neither slumber nor sleep. I think we're meant here to remember the story where the prophet Elijah took on the prophets of Baal at Mount Carmel, and when Baal failed to set the sacrifice his followers had offered alight by fire, Elijah mocked his opponents, telling them to shout louder in case Baal was asleep. As the psalmist here says, Baal won't answer you or protect you because it's as if he's asleep. In fact, he doesn't even exist. But he who watches over Israel isn't like that at all. He will neither slumber nor sleep. We may not have Baal today, but we have plenty of instances where we go after that which is not God in order to find satisfaction in life. I'm not saying that advertising, for example, is wrong per se, but much of it is based on the idea of making people dissatisfied with their lives unless they have the one particular item being presented to them as the solution to all their problems. And we have so many adverts like that because they work. We fall for them. The Christian virtue of contentment would destroy so much of our economics today. Money is similar. We need it, but it's a good servant and a poor master. We delude ourselves that a higher income or a lottery win will make us happy. But J.D. Rockefeller, the first ever American billionaire, was asked once how much money was enough, and he replied, "Just a little more than I already have." Yes, even someone as ridiculously wealthy as him. But money never satisfies. It always demands more, and it never delivers true peace. The best that can be said for it is, as Spike Milligan said, that it may not make you happy, but it may make you comfortable in your misery. And alongside Baal in Canaanite religion was the goddess Asherah. She symbolized many things, but the theme the Bible seems most concerned about is that she was a fertility deity. There were trees and poles dedicated to her as totems of fertility. And in the book of Judges, we read of Gideon being told to cut down an Asherah pole. The contemporary equivalent to Asherah is our society's devotion to sex as a god. We live in a society where primary school children are encountering pornography on the internet. We make people feel inferior if they're not in a relationship. And in the general absence of belief in God, people look to their romantic partners to fulfill them. A burden a mere mortal cannot carry. Once again, we are dealing with idols. We have elevated a good part of God's creation into a deity itself. Sex and relationships are crucial to humanity, and I would say they are among God's best inventions. But they are only that, creations, not gods. And so to look to them for ultimate meaning and significance in life is to go looking in the wrong place again. We end up doing terrible things as a result. These things are a gift of God, to be received with thanksgiving. They are not of themselves divine, and they should not be worshipped. The trouble, as the great Catholic novelist G.K. Chesterton said, is that, in his words, when men stop believing in God, they don't believe in nothing, they believe in anything. Secondly, the psalmist says, don't fear the created order. If we're dealing with created things that are not God's, there is still the issue that creation itself can have fearsome power. Should we live our lives in terror of that? No, says the psalmist, that would be looking in the wrong place for the meaning of life. Verses 5 and 6. The Lord watches over you. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. The sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. Well, the power of the sun in the Middle East is significant. When I spent 3 weeks in Israel in July 1989, the temperature was regularly over 40 degrees Celsius each day, and that was way before the record-breaking summers of recent years. We were advised to drink 6 litres of water a day to remain hydrated. Hence, pilgrims walking to Jerusalem, maybe not in the height of summer, but probably in late spring or early autumn, would still have protracted exposure to what we would consider quite hot conditions. They would have to be careful. And the reference to the moon? Surely the nights would be a release. But not exactly. Peterson again. A person travelling for a long distance on foot under the pressures of fatigue and anxiety can become emotionally ill, which was described by ancient writers as moonstroke, or what we call, or used to call, I should say, lunacy. See the lunar connection with the moon. But again, serious as these things are, and as we and the ancients also know through phenomena like storms and earthquakes, they are not the ultimate truth to be feared. Whatever the dangers are, we have a Lord who watches over us and who is our shade. 4 times in this psalm, in the NIV, we are told that the Lord watches over us. Whatever bad things come our way, God has not forgotten us. Another quote from Eugene Peterson. The only serious mistake we can make when illness comes, when anxiety threatens, when conflict disturbs our relationships with others, is to conclude that God has gotten bored in looking after us and has shifted his attention to a more exciting Christian, or that God has become disgusted with our meandering obedience and decided to let us fend for ourselves for a while, or that God has gotten too busy fulfilling prophecy in the Middle East to take time now to sort out the complicated mess we've gotten ourselves into. That is the only serious spiritual mistake we can make. It's the mistake that Psalm 121 prevents the mistake of, supposing that God's interest in us waxes and wanes in response to our spiritual temperature. And we have, of course, read that our God is the maker of heaven and earth. In other words, he created all these things to which we wrongly look for meaning and truth. They are created things, but he is their creator. Instead of looking in the wrong place at these things, let's look in the right place, to our Maker and Redeemer. We put these things in their place, under God's sovereign rule, as we are. And we remember that God cares for us, even when the difficulties and the pain come, as the final 2 verses of the psalm say. The Lord will keep you from all harm. He will watch over your life. The Lord will watch over your coming and going, both now and forevermore. It's not that we shall have a trouble-free existence, even though the psalmist's words may sound like that. The rest of Scripture affirms, as Jesus said, that in the world you will have tribulation. But as Jesus goes on to say, but be of good cheer, I have overcome the world. God will be looking out, taking care of us. His Son took the journey to Jerusalem and ended up on a cross, but God raised him from the dead. This is the journey we're taking. On it, we do not look in the wrong place to worship or fear the created order, but rather we put ourselves in the hands of the Lord, who is the maker of heaven and earth. He will hold us as we trust our lives to him through his Son, Jesus Christ our Lord. I hope you find that helpful as a kick-off to our series on the Psalms of Ascent and the journey to Jerusalem. I hope you'll be with me next week for another of these Psalms of Ascent. And until then, goodbye and God bless you.